Okay, real quick, before we get to today's topic, I have to show you guys something really awesome that came in the mail. So it is 2020, and the need to wear masks has increased. So I went out of my way to order these really cool anime masks online. This one is from My Hero Academia, which is my all-time favorite anime. You have Deku, the titular character, striking a really kick-ass pose, and honestly, when I put this on my face, it makes me feel like more of an epic badass, so I'm very proud of this one. This one is also from My Hero Academia, and I want to wear this in public. Like, I want to wear this to work sometime and see if anyone recognizes it, because if anyone out there recognizes this, then we can be best friends. And then this last one is actually something my wife ordered. This is from the really awesome fantasy series Demon Slayer. The main character, Nezuko, is on this mask, and honestly, it's just, if we're going to wear masks in public, why not look really cool, at the same time? So we ordered a bunch of these. If you guys are curious where we ordered these from, please let us know in the comments, and we'd be happy to send you a link. They are relatively cheap, but let's go ahead and get to today's subject.
We love her as our mother, even though she isn't. We all live together, but we're not related.
This is Gracefield House, a place for children without parents.
We may not be linked by blood, but we're still family.
Welcome to yet another episode of Round the Clock Frights. I am Josh, and today I'm going to tap into my inner dweeb and talk about an anime that I recently watched. Now, for those who are new to this channel, we do review mostly things that are horror-related, TV shows and movies that are scary in nature, and occasionally some literature, but I'm also a pretty big fan of anime. It actually first started when I first met my wife when I was in high school, and she introduced me to a ton of really enticing anime shows like Sword Art Online, Full Metal Panic, and I've watched many shows over the years. Now, on this channel, I have reviewed a certain anime before. I did a video editorial on Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood about Nina Tucker, and I also reviewed the 1990s thriller Perfect Blue. I love talking about anime, and today I'm going to be talking about 2019's The Promised Neverland. Now, a little bit of backstory with me in this anime. So, honestly, it kind of just started like a couple of days ago. I was just kind of bored, and I was just kind of mindlessly surfing Netflix, looking for something to watch, and I wasn't really in the mood for anything in particular. I just kind of wanted to see, what was currently on Netflix, and I saw this show on there, The Promised Neverland. I was looking through the anime section, and the promo image is of these three really cute, kawaii-looking children, and I read the premise, and it did sound kind of intriguing. It talked about how they all live in an orphanage, something is going on, something that they weren't expecting, and I thought it looked pretty intriguing. I knew absolutely nothing about this concept. I was just kind of suckered in, and I originally thought that this was going to be kind of a a warm-hearted fantasy series, something that would make my heart feel very warm, and it would make me feel all fuzzy inside. But let me just say that it had the total opposite effect on me. This is a very eerie, intense anime that was very misleading, because like I said, when I looked at the images for this show, the characters all looked very cute, the settings looked very bright and colorful, and I soon discovered that that was not the case. Now, this was an anime released by the studio Cloverworks, which I discovered is actually a subsidiary of Aniplex, which is responsible for anime like Sword Art Online and many others. But they released this anime, and from what I understand, it is adapted from a manga. I haven't read the manga, and this was one of those shows that I just had to binge watch. It took me only a couple of days to finish this show. I just became so hooked, and as soon as I saw what was going on, let me just say that my reaction was pretty similar to Brian Griffin's in that one episode of Family Guy, where he's sitting at the kitchen table and his jaw just suddenly drops, and he just kind of stares like in complete awe for a few seconds. Like, that was me when I found out what this show was really about. So, what is the central premise of The Promised Neverland? Well, for those who have watched this show, right off the bat, I just have to comment on how clever the title is, because the title, The Promised Neverland, it does allude to the classic story Peter Pan. And what I found interesting about that was, in the Peter Pan story, Neverland was this magical place where children never grew up. It was like a happy place for them. But in this show, The Promised Neverland, these kids don't get the chance to grow up. They are actually being harvested at this orphanage. And once they reach a certain age, they are shipped off to be eaten and devoured by these hideous creatures. Intrigued yet?
This loving house was my home. However, a single truth turned our world upside down. My home was a cage.
So yes, that is the premise of The Promised Neverland. And the first episode, we're introduced to the three main characters. One is this adorable little girl named Emma. She's kind of the, she's kind of the optimist of the group. She's always, running around with a huge smile on her face, and she's always looking at the positive side of things. And then you also have Norman, this little boy who's also a math prodigy, and he's pretty much a boy genius. Like, he can even outsmart some of the adults in this show. And then you have Ray, who is a bit more rational. He's like the rational one of the group. He is the one who kind of thinks outside the box, and he considers all options, and he's the rational one of the group. And the first episode, we are introduced to these kids, and they're living life at this orphanage. Life just seems really swell. The year is 2045, and for some reason, society has regressed to the Victorian era. Like, the adults in this show are dressed very Victorian, as well as the kids, and even the setting and the decor reminds me of something out of like a Charles Dickens novel. But anyway, you have all these kids are living at this orphanage, and in the first episode, they are running around playing tag. They're having a lot of fun with each other, and then we discover that this little girl named Bonnie is actually being adopted by this loving family. But that ain't the case. Hot damn, is that not the case? Because at the end of the episode, the mother of the household, Isabella, which, by the way, I have so much to say about this goddamn fucking bitch. Oh my god, Isabella is a character that just angered me to my core, and I have a lot to say about her, but we will get to that. So at the end of the first episode, Isabella, the supreme bitch, escorts Bonnie out of the orphanage and basically takes her to this facility where she will supposedly meet her new family. And she accidentally leaves a stuffed animal behind, and Emma and Norman decide to return the stuffed animal to her before she departs. And once they get to the facility, let's just say shit hits the fan. They discover that Bonnie has actually been put inside this enormous test tube, and she's being shipped off to be supposedly eaten by these ravenous demons, which, by the way, the design of these demons, oh my god, they are just so grotesque, so hideous to look at, and they were kind of, they were something straight out of like an Edgar Allan Poe story, just very, hideous to look at, and oh my god, the series really took a turn, because this is where things started to get really, really horrific. So the rest of the show, the kids decide to put an escape plan together. The majority of the show is us watching these kids, trying to, work out this environment and trying to decide how they'll be able to escape from this place. And, honestly, you would think that a premise like this could get kind of dull. I mean, are we just going to watch these kids, plan, their escape? Is that going to be the entire show? But they do throw in enough twists, the writers do, and we're introduced to other kid characters. There's this pair named Dawn and Gilda who become wrapped up in this plot to escape. They learn the truth about the orphanage, and there's also this batshit insane assistant named Crone, which, by the way, I thought this assistant's name at first was Corona, but I think I was hearing what I wanted to hear, essentially. But her name is Crone, and she is incredibly over the top and insane. she constantly carries around this little baby doll whom she talks to, and she essentially treats it as if it's her own child. When she is alone in her bedroom, she sings at the top of her lungs. She dances around. She's an insane character, but as the second central antagonist, she's a nice contrast to Isabella. So let's get to one of the greatest anime villains in recent memory, which is Isabella. Which, by the way, guys, if I didn't mention this at the start of my review, this video is going to contain some spoilers. So Isabella, the internet pretty much despises her. There are a lot of forums dedicated to this woman and how monstrous she is, because here's the reason why she makes such a compelling villain. The most interesting villains to me are the ones who are very calm and calculated. Someone like Hannibal Lecter, someone who doesn't really show off their monstrous side in public. They kind of keep it all inside. And Isabella, for the most part, is a character like that. For the majority of the show, she is, very subdued. She's constantly smiling, and she wears this smirk that just makes you want to slap her across the face, because, we find out that she is willingly raising these kids to be devoured by demons, which is a terrible thing to do. And, honestly, she doesn't have to do much to be intimidating. With one expression, she can just send shivers down your spine, and that's what makes such a great villain. And she was honestly the most interesting and complex character of the show, because here's the thing, and this is where the spoilers come in. So Isabella at first does seem a little bit one note. Her sole purpose in the show seems to be raising these kids so that they can be shipped off, but she does have kind of a loving, motherly side to her. It seems as if she does genuinely care about these kids. At least she says she does. Now, she never outwardly says that she's uncomfortable with the notion of sending them off, because honestly, I don't think she is. She even mentions at one point that she's just doing this to survive. She wants to live as long as she possibly can while raising these kids in a quote-unquote happy environment. So she wasn't a one-note character at all. She had a lot of layers to her, which honestly, that just makes such a tremendous villain. One of the best anime villains in history. Now, I do have to talk about the big twist of this show, which, by the way, I've actually encouraged many of my weeb friends to watch this show immediately, because the main twist in this series did catch me thoroughly off guard. We discover in the last few minutes of the show that Isabella is actually the biological mother of Ray. Once again, my jaw dropped to the floor. But this also kind of makes you see the show in a new light, because we see these flashbacks of her childhood, and we forget that pretty much every human in this show probably did grow up in an orphanage like this. And we do see Isabella as a child. She used to be very happy-go-lucky, and she essentially used to be like Emma. She was very cheerful, and they when they shipped her off, instead of eating her, they trained her to be the mother of this household. And she eventually became pregnant, and the idea that she actually loves these kids, once we learn all these things about her, it does start to make a little bit more sense. And, honestly, this is just a character who, right off the bat, just entices you with how interesting she is.
A white uniform.
The ID numbers.
Tests that are held every day.
A forbidden gate.
A surrounding fence.
A rule keeping us
A
inside.
hidden design to our lives.
You're both going to die!
You knew from the start that won't happen. I'll make sure of it and do whatever it takes.
Let's change the world. We'll plan to escape with everyone.
Now, I've gone on enough about Isabella. How are the rest of the characters? Well, I have to say that I watched the English dub of this show. And Emma, while cute and lovable, was voiced by Erica Mendez, the same actress who played another animated character, Retsuko, in the Netflix series of Gretzko, which is a great office satire. If you haven't seen Gretzko, please check it out. But every time I heard her speak as Emma, I just heard Retsuko. I just imagined Retsuko in this show, which was a little bit distracting for me. That says nothing about her as a vocal actress. She is very talented. The other two characters, Norman and Ray. Norman, it was a typical case of a woman pretending to be a little boy, which could be grating to some viewers, and Ray, the voice actress who played him, did a fine job. Let's talk about their characters a little bit. I've already mentioned how Emma is essentially the cute one of the group, but she does have a little bit of a dark side to her. Like when there's a point in one episode where she discovers that Ray has actually been spying on them. Ray is actually Isabella's spy, and he's been reporting information to Isabella. Now, he's been doing this because he wants to mislead Isabella, and he actually wants to save all these children. Well, he wants to save Emma and Norman. But when Emma learns about Ray's treachery, she just gets in his face, and she says with the most serious voice, "You better not do that again, you motherfucker." She doesn't quite say it like that, but she does have a dark side to her. Norman, okay. I'm not going to say I dislike this character because it is established that he is pretty much a child genius, but I don't know. The fact that he was always one step ahead of the villains, honestly, I don't know. I'm not going to say that it annoyed me, but in a show like this, I kind of want to see the villains prevail. I kind of want to see them one-up the heroes, every now and then. And the fact that Norman was this all-knowing, intelligent child who was always one step ahead of the villains, it did get a little bit irritating at times. And honestly, the plans that these kids come up with are incredibly elaborate. We discover in the last two episodes that there is actually more to their plan than we originally thought. They actually put much more into it. And at times, it kind of felt like their plan was a bit too good to be true. And I'm not going to say that it kind of... I'm not going to say that it took a toll on this show's quality, because it really didn't. This is a very well-written, intricate show, but just the fact that these children were able to compose a plan that was just so articulate and so perfect. Honestly, for me, there could have been a little bit more conflict. There's a moment in one episode where two of the other children, Dawn and Gilda, they discover Isabella's secret room, which is, of course, behind a bookshelf. There's a hidden door concealed by a bookcase. We haven't seen that before. But in that moment, I kind of wanted them to be discovered by Isabella, which doesn't happen. They actually leave that situation just fine. And, like I said, I think there could have been a little bit more conflict. I think the kids were just a little bit too clever, at least for my taste. Now, if I had any other criticisms of the show, I would say that they don't reveal the monsters too much, which I really appreciated, but there's one scene that I could have done without. It's where Isabella is communicating with the demon's headquarters, and we see a group of demons sitting around this table. They're essentially having a council meeting, and just something about that sequence was a little bit silly, and I don't know. I thought the other scenes in which they handled the monsters were very well done. They're usually, very brief. We see them commit some violent atrocities, and for the most part, this show does a very effective job of horrifying you. It doesn't need to show too much. It's not incredibly gory. The violence is actually pretty subdued for the most part. I can't really think of a sequence that was just over the top crazy and bloody. I mean, the assistant crone does have a death sequence where I thought she was going to get eaten. I thought the monster was going to essentially tear her head off, but it just kind of squeezes her to death, and I was like, okay. But the monsters do make for some effective villains, and the horror aspects of the show actually do work.
The Promised Neverland.
Oh, and another thing that I haven't mentioned is that there are some very subtle character moments in the show as well. Things that basically show you how the characters are feeling without much dialogue. There's a moment in the second episode where Emma and Norman escape from Isabella in the hallway, and you see Norman's hand twitching, which basically tells you everything you need to know. Everything you need to know about how he's feeling. They don't need to say too much. Just little character moments like that I really appreciate. And I do have to commend the animators of this series because, well, first of all, the show is just gorgeous. I mean, especially the exterior scenes where, it's bright and sunny outside, and it looks honestly like a gorgeous painting. The sky is very blue. The grass is incredibly green. It looks picture perfect, which again is very clever because it's misleading. Because, as I mentioned, if you look at certain screenshots of this show, it might lead you to thinking that this is a very colorful and innocent series, but it's actually not. And it reminds me a little bit of the 1980s movie Blue Velvet. Blue Velvet is a movie that on the surface was, kind of wholesome and American. It took place in this picture-perfect suburban neighborhood, and, on the surface, everything looks, beautiful and refined, but it turns out that some very ugly things are actually in the works. That's what this series reminded me of. And, like I said, just the horror aspects of this show were damn effective. Now, how did this show compare to other anime that I've watched recently? It's definitely up there, man. As far as new anime series that I've watched over the past few years, I've been sticking mostly to fantasy series. I did watch a little bit of Fire Force. I did watch some of Sword Art Alicization, which my wife is obsessed with, by the way. But I would definitely say this is one of the better anime series that I've watched in the past few years. I could have used a little bit more conflict, like I said. Just a few more instances in which the villains truly outwit the heroes. But in the end, the heroes are actually the ones who have been outsmarting the villains this entire time, which, like I said, didn't ruin the narrative for me. It is a very, very well-written show, and I definitely recommend watching it. Like I said, you could binge watch this in probably a couple of days, or if you wanted to pull like an all-nighter, it's only 12 episodes long, and it's definitely worth your time. And I wouldn't call this show post-apocalyptic per se. Well, actually, it might be. I actually am not sure. The ending certainly does, make way for a sequel, which I really hope there is a second season for this show. But it does paint a rather grim future. And if you're a fan of stories like that, I think you'll be drawn in like almost immediately. But yes, please check this one out, guys. It is terrific, and I think I've said everything that there is to say about it. And yeah, Promised Neverland, it was very promising, and it certainly delivered. Now, as far as what we have next in the works, me and Thor have a couple of ideas in mind. I know Kim does as well. As far as getting the group back together and making more videos together, we are still being a little bit more careful about, being in the same room together. I mean, with me and Thor, we live in the same house together. So we interact with each other pretty much every day. But, we're still being, very cautious. And I certainly hope you guys are staying safe. But we will definitely be bringing you some more horrific content in the future. If you liked what you saw in this video, please subscribe. And Halloween is just around the corner. It's almost the month of October. I couldn't be more excited. We have some awesome things in the works, and I just put together a list of movies to watch throughout the month of October, movies that I haven't seen yet. I usually try to get a good mix of, slasher films, classic black and white films, more modern films. I try to get a good mix in there, and I think I've come up with a pretty good list for this October. Now, are there any movies that you guys are planning on watching throughout the month of October? Please let me know in the comments. Like I said, if you like what you saw, please hit that subscribe button. And as always, have a very scary day, boils and ghouls. And whatever you do, if you are ever sent to live in an orphanage, just be careful that the headmistress isn't secretly trying to kill you or send you off to be devoured alive by a group of demons. You know where I'm going with this. Have a good night, guys. Take care, and I will see you soon.